Hello and welcome to the Quarterback in Your Life podcast. I am your host, Keenan Reynolds. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Che Mock. And boy, do we got an episode for y'all. It's been a very active week, Che. And I've honestly been chomping at the bit to sit down and have a conversation.
Me too. This has been a tumultuous one, man. A lot going on in the world, but glad we can get on and discuss about it.
Yeah, we had some conversations offline. And to start the week, I mean, we had a hell of a rundown. I mean, number one, we both watched that the Comey rule on Showtime, which led up perfectly into the debacle. There was a debate, and then last night we had some NBA Finals action. So I mean, plenty for us to talk about. But for me, I kind of want to start with this Comey rule documentary. I thought it was very well done. It was honestly like two movies uh, in one, and very revealing. To be honest with you, I believe everything that they talked about in there, because it was just so believable. I don't know the guy's name that played Trump, but he did a hell of a job. And just the way they portrayed that entire administration was amazing. I don't know how you felt about it, but I thought it was amazing.
Oh, I mean, I think that it's going to be received as biased potentially,
For sure, yeah.
because the portrayal was one that certainly opened your eyes to some of the realities of what occurred. I think that it was well done in the sense that they reminded you of things that we knew happened for fact, and they just played it out into screen, right? And that
Yeah.
was so cool. It makes you get perspective of when you hear about like the secret meeting at Trump Tower, you hear about it, you don't know if it's true. Then we find out it's true in testimony, but then I don't think you visualize like, wait a minute, like they really had this meeting
Yeah.
happen. And like you hear about the phone call that was recorded by, the FBI, Michael Flynn had, and then he lied about every minute of the call. And he was
that was so I wasn't very, I'll admit in 2016, I wasn't quite, 16, 17, I wasn't quite in tune with politics and the way of the world as I am now. But I will say this much. When I saw the way that played out and how he was just so able to, like, I can't imagine sitting across from an FBI agent, right? And he's literally reading word for word what you said. So I mean, unless you got dementia or you can't remember, like really bad memory, like he literally read word for word, and the man's just sat there and denied it flat out. Like that's crazy to me, especially coming from a senior military officer. Pretty crazy to think about. People are in that situation, and really just kind of seeing the extent of that quote unquote collusion. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but I don't know. I mean, it looked like a little bit of collusion to me.
And I wonder too, from like your perspective as a military officer, I mean, one of the things that you have that you value is your honor and your commitment to the United States. So, I mean, you're not only are you by rank and file a member of the military, but then at that point you're in the White House as a cabinet member. And so it's almost like you're double dipping on your American duty at that point.
Yeah.
So to be able to do it with such disregard is, for that to be a senior administrator in the White House is just troubling. It's just, so, I mean, whether or not people believe in collusion, people can't disregard the facts, right? And so it was eye-opening to me too. And I made sure, and I actually watched it with someone who I have differing views with. And I speak loudly and proudly to say I'm an independent, and I don't believe that anybody's ever going to tell me what my ideology is going to be. I think that I have the right to have enough independent thought of mind, make a decision based on circumstances as they present themselves. There are fundamental things in my life that I can never take without regard, and that's sort of gender equity. I just fundamentally think that there should be equal, racial equity. So on and so forth. And so if I feel that anybody's not participating in those beliefs, then I can't agree, with that party regard. I can't overlook that because, as a minority, I can't overlook somebody who doesn't think that we're of equal stature or of equal rights to my brother, white, blue, black, brown, or yellow. It doesn't matter. So you know, and not to digress, but I say that to say that my ideology is one of just sort of just simplistic sort of thought, and to see how sort of dismissive the administration was about it, and then like that question, and I don't know if this actually happened, but the question of, well, is it really a crime to
Gelato, another
lie,
administrator.
lie to another administrator? And like the look on the agent's face, or not even, I don't
It was, I
remember
think it
the,
was either the AG or the deputy AG. I think
yeah,
Sally. It was Sally Yates. It was Sally Yates talking to the White House
yeah,
counsel. Yeah,
yeah, and
that
her
was
look
pretty
of being
crazy.
like, that was crazy. It was like,
Yeah,
yeah, not only is it a crime, but it's a problem. Like it.
yeah.
So
I mean, me personally, when I watched it, I think it. First of all, I mean, for all the criticisms that one could put out for James Comey, you got to appreciate the amount of pressure this guy was under. I mean, some of the decisions that he had to make. I mean, you talk about being in between a rock and a hard place. It's like there's really nothing you can do that is going to make everything okay. And it's like you're trying to do your civic duty as head of the FBI, but at the same time, these decisions and the things that you have to do as head of the FBI are like directly conflicting, like, the election. There, people blamed him. They say he's the one that got Trump elected, which I think is crazy. I mean, but when people don't,
I don't think that's crazy.
people are, yeah, I mean, I'm not. I can't say that I'm surprised that people felt that way. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, it's it's crazy to place blame on somebody, um, for other people's actions. Like people came out, they supported Trump. They didn't really like Clinton, and I really can't blame them. I mean, in light of all that was going on, in light of the investigations, in light of the way she kind of ran her campaign, and I think some of the things, I don't know how true it is, but I saw some things from FBI agents in the documentary or whatever, where they were taking shots at Hillary. So it's like it was almost like there was like a widespread divide. Like people just really didn't like her. And wanted to kind of give Trump a shot from a standpoint of like, well, we don't like Clinton and we don't really know what Trump's going to give us, but we know he's a somewhat successful businessman, quote unquote. So, maybe he can run this country pretty well. So I think that's kind of the mindset going into the 16 election, which in my opinion is literal 180 from the mindset going into this next election. But
Well,
again,
if I may, and before we go into that discussion on this election, I don't think that James Comey is the reason that Donald Trump won the 2016 election. There's a whole confluence of factors that go into what I think you had a contention of individuals who, right or wrong, just were not satisfied with the 8 years that President Obama provided.
yeah,
And you had the buildup of those individuals, in addition to an outsider who was not your typical politician who people could get
hmm
not if not excited, at least enthusiastic about. And then you did have what was perceived to be a really, perception was that she was a bad candidate. But I will say that the uh, compound effect of him reopening that investigation,
right before,
left
like
it,
literally
yeah,
14 days before the election. Yeah,
was enormous,
yeah,
because people were already voting. And if even though it didn't produce any additional information, even though it didn't, um,
perception change though.
the perception, not only did the perception change, but the the ability for someone to move on from that was now shaken at its core. People moved on when the decision was rendered that, hey, this had nothing to do
Right, right.
with any
But
violation of the law.
but here's the thing though, Jay. Like in that respect, I agreed with the decision to open the investigation again. And here's my opinion on that. Let's say he doesn't. Let's say Hillary wins, and let's say it comes out, which it would have come out, that they were. Let's say they didn't even announce that they were investigating, or let's say that they just said we're not even going to look at those messages. And let's say Hillary wins, she's in office, and then it comes out that those messages did contain incriminating evidence, and now it looks the FBI covered up, an investigation to help someone win. Could you imagine the damage to our democracy? I would consider would be close to irreparable. I mean,
You know what's funny?
that is
You
that
know,
is like that is dictatorship type activity because I mean you could run with
Well,
a
hold on,
million
wait, no,
theories.
well, hold on now. You asked me, could I imagine effect on our democracy if post-election we found out that there was something going on pre-election that was so um, tremendously bad or
I know where you're
suffice
going
it
with
to
this.
say,
I know.
yes.
Let me stop you. I know where you're going with this. Let me stop you. Let me clarify what I meant because I know exactly where you're going with this. Um, I'm speaking from like the FBI. Like I feel like it would just I think it's kind of hard for me to like really put it out there without sounding like I'm like being hypocritical because I can see that, but I just in my opinion like if there would have been hard nosed proof that there was criminal like there would have been no disputing the criminality of those messages had that come out that there was criminality and she'd been in office and it would have completely eroded the faith in the FBI and honestly in our intelligence community as a whole. And
Agree.
then so then going doubling back to the point you were about to make as it relates to Russia, while I do believe there was some issues in that particular, I don't want to speculate too much for sake of being politically correct, which I shouldn't be, but I will say that there was some stuff going on, right? Some nefarious activity but I'll say this much: through the investigation, it came out that regardless of the people that made the decisions and that broke the law were arrested. I mean, now people would say, "Hey, listen, president did this, he did that." Nonetheless, like the investigation happened and it was clear. So my whole point is like if there had been a reverse scenario in which Clinton was president and an investigation happened and it came out that the FBI hid these messages that didn't in fact contain criminality, I feel like it would be a larger scandal. I feel like I know that sounds really crazy, but I just think with it being I don't know. To me, it would have been a little bit larger because I don't know. I mean, for all the
I
talk
think
about and the way they influenced getting Donald Trump elected, a lot of it had to do with misinformation, and directly affecting, putting a lot of fake news out there about Hillary, and then, that's really that's as far as I can speak to their direct impact. I mean, I'm sure there was more that we don't necessarily know
yeah,
about.
we may not know. We who knows? And I mean, the misinformation, but also the breach. They breached both the Republican and the Democratic National Committee's email servers, but they only released the emails pertaining to Hillary,
Yeah.
particularly pertaining to Bernie Sanders and sort of the internal. You can use the word collusion.
Mhm.
Democratic National Committee to essentially promote Hillary to the top. So there were other factors other than just the term. I hate the term fake news, but there were other factors. I think that you're right in the sense that had Hillary become president, that there would have been an enormous um, backlash against the FBI, and there would have been, of course. I mean, as loud as Trump is now, imagine if he hadn't been elected. I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah, that's kind of where I was getting at too. Yeah.
he was unfiltered, untethered. Yeah, and so he would have been equally loud on Twitter, and if not louder, about there was a collusion to keep him from being president, and so on and so forth. But
And I have a point.
um,
We're gonna come back to that. I want our listeners to bookmark the point you just made, Che, because it's gonna come back. It's gonna come home to roost in the current conversation about the debate. But keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt
no, no problem. And I think, and I'm glad we'll talk about it. But I think that speaking to that hypothetical is a reality of the level of or the weight of the decision that Comey had on his hands, and keeping in mind that it is a movie, so there's going to be some drama and betrayal. I don't
you.
know
Yeah.
how much he weighed the effect that his decisions are going to have. I don't know if he really thought to himself like, I have to do this. I have to come out with this information.
Yeah.
It's just troubling that there was information on, and I mean on both sides. Candidly. Now recognizing that there was not enough to show that there was any level of collusion per se, recognizing that a chief cabinet member or soon to be cabinet member potentially was in conversations and was in meetings, was the amount and we don't know the amount of information they had, but
Yeah.
recognizing that to be and then having it play out, and then testing the democracy to the level that it did, all the way to the level of an impeachment,
Mhm.
it, it didn't shake the foundation of our democracy enough for Americans to look past red and blue, which is
Yeah.
disheartening to me. And I think, regardless, and I guess it's easy for me to say because I'm independent in thought, and um, again, I'm not an ideologue. I just, I sort of disgusted at the fact that we've normalized an impeachment. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I find it really crazy, from an impeachment standpoint, and I would love to hit a Google search on this 'cause I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm not sure if there has been a president that has been impeached that has been reelected. I know the last president that was impeached was Bill Clinton, but that was his second term, if I'm not mistaken, right? Where that came
that-
through. I don't know. I could be wrong.
no, that's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's weird, but a point that you made about the red and the blue and the polarization, and it just kind of got me thinking. We've had multiple conversations about just kind of what's going on in the world as we kind of built up the prepping for this podcast. And one point that I kind of want to bring to our listeners is the whole point is like we're talking about these things that kind of sound like boring CNN or Bloomberg type stuff, but it's important, right? Because the people we're targeting are the millennials, and the people within their 20s and their 30s that otherwise don't really know where to go, uh or who should I listen to for like unbiased information. So like the whole point of this is for us to be as unbiased as possible, but also deliver some opinion. I mean, I say be unbiased, but I want to deliver opinions. I know it sounds crazy, but what I mean by that is like I don't want to just spew out propaganda per se, or like just kind of sound like anti this or that. I just want to kind of you mentioned being independent. Like I just want to point out this is stupid. Like, and this is why I feel like it's stupid. And these are the facts to back it up. You know what I'm saying? So as we turn our attention to the 2020 and all that's going on, and again doubling back to the red and blue point, I feel like the polarization has become so apparent in everyday society because of the coronavirus. And here's what I mean. So you think back to the first weeks of the NFL and some of the protests and some of the fan reactions, right? You think back to the beginning of the NBA bubble and what they were doing for social justice, and how people felt about that. I actually saw a poll the other day on Darren Ravel's Twitter page, and he was asking people how they felt about the NBA over the last 5 years, and a lot of people was pretty essentially the outcome that I saw. I don't know what it's like now, but when I voted, some people was like less interested in the NBA over the last 5 years. So I mean, one could argue that that would be due into the fact that the players have a very large voice. So my entire point is there's been a lot of criticism to that social justice wave. There's been a lot of criticism toward taking the knee, or protesting what's going on at the anthem, or Black Lives Matter. But there was something that happened during that debate on Tuesday night that it was Tuesday night, right? I'm getting my days crossed up.
Yep, it was. It
Yeah.
was Tuesday night.
Okay. Tuesday night. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's been a crazy week. But there's something about that debate Tuesday night that really like drew my attention. Chris Wallace asked Trump, he says, Mr. President, will you denounce white supremacy? There's been a lot of talk about your defense of white supremacists. He brought up the Charlottesville thing. And he says, Mr. President, this is your time now on a national stage to denounce white supremacy. And then the president was like, sure, sure, sure. Right. So he was like, all right, well, go ahead and do it. And then the president's like, well, so who do you want me to denounce? And I'm like, just white supremacists. I don't know. Like you could be pretty frank. You don't have to be specific. But Joe Biden says Proud Boys. So he says Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. And so like it flew all over Twitter. I mean, Twitter was just like that was like honestly
Well,
the hot point for me of the night. And I found it so funny because as soon as he said that, he immediately deflected to I think the violence from the left is more of the problem. And so the reason why I bring that up in context of all the social justice and all of what's been going on in sports is they've been getting constantly attacked, right? But they're not promoting any supremacist ideas. They're not promoting any hate ideas. They're promoting equality. They're promoting justice. But they are harshly criticized, especially by our president. But on a national stage, that same harsh
In front of the
criticism can
entire
be
world.
delivered to a supremacist hate
Yeah.
group that is Islamophobic, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, all the phobics that you can think of, but they can't receive the harsh criticism that Black Lives Matter. All of a sudden, Black Lives Matters is a Marxist organization that has a political agenda. When, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of many Black people, all Black people, Black Lives Matter is simply a phrase bringing awareness to the fact that there is systemic injustice and systemic racism in this country, and we want to be equality in all areas of life and not just the bare minimum and not just equal on the field. So that statement is really kind of what really drew a lot of to me, and I'm really interested to hear how you feel about it, Jay, because i just I find the hypocrisy very telling, and in light of the election being, a little over a month away, I feel like a lot of people don't really think on that level to kind of draw those comparisons of like, hey, wait a minute, why can't you be consistent? Now, in Trump's defense, he did roll out, I think it's called the Platinum Plan, where he was going to make the KKK a hate organization, or extremists or something like that. He was going to officially name them, denounce them, I guess. So I will give him credit there, but I guess on a grand stage where you have the entire country watching, that's what you say. And that particular group, the Proud Boys, take that. They branded it. I was reading about how they took it and they put it. They're already putting it on T-shirts. I mean, they rolling with it. You know what I'm saying? They love it. It was a rallying. It's going to be perceived as a rallying cry to them, not a denouncement. So, I don't know. I have feelings about that because I see the inconsistencies, and it's not surprising, but I'm interested to hear what you think about that, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. Um, I mean, uh, I was told at a early age, when somebody shows you who they are,
Believe them.
believe them.
Hmm.
Um, and so, and I was also told at an early age, a hard head makes a soft butt.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
dad used to say it all the time.
yeah, but on the first point, I mean, what do you say other than believe them as to him not being able to denounce? He's done it before. Very fine people in Charlottesville. I mean, I think one time he was out to denounce David Duke. I think he maybe did at some point, or maybe he wouldn't denounce him per se and just said he doesn't support him or something. I mean, who knows? There's been a multitude of occasions. And I think some of that was even before he was in office that he wouldn't, because he doesn't like to offend anyone who he thinks may follow him. But
Yeah,
what's
that's
what's
great
unique,
point.
yeah, he doesn't offend anyone he thinks may follow. But what's unique though is that he'll come out and say things like, I've been the most
I've done
I've
the most
helped
for
the
black people since Abe
yeah,
Lincoln. That was pretty funny. I cracked up at
yeah,
that one.
it's astounding because I mean, like, I don't know, maybe the Civil Rights Act,
Yeah.
maybe the end of segregation. There's a number of things
Maybe.
that I would say that maybe, um, maybe board, overseeing board of education, presidents who enforce some of those laws, etc. But nonetheless, but it's resounding to say that, and then at its core, know that it offends. That, like, he's saying that he has the most support from that group, but you got to know that offends a part of that group. So then the question really becomes: do you care about that group if you're willing to offend them? Not
Right.
like, what I mean. What's the balance? Because at the end of the day, which I don't understand about Donald Trump, and maybe this is a part of the misunderstanding that should be understood, is that those individuals presumably know that that not that he is necessarily affiliated or tied or wants their support, but they are going to give him the support, and he should know that.
Right.
So if you think, I don't know, I don't understand strategic. It must be a framework of thought to where if I don't denounce that or those people, then they won't come out and vote at all. More so than if I do denounce them,
More people
then
more people will come out and vote.
exactly
Because
right.
this is how I see it. I mean, I think if you come out like to me, the debate stage is it's easy pickings for a politician because a lot of Americans don't do the due diligence on their own. They're not going to go and read like the fine print on your policy. They're not going to see what are you really saying. You know what I'm saying? Like what you say, what you say on TV is what you get. So in that respect, I think Trump does a really good job of appealing to his real base because he says what his word is law based on what he says. So he understands that. But to me, if you're really gonna play the politicking game, there's another side of that coin that you can appeal to. So when you have the opportunity and he says, "How do you feel about white supremacy?" Why doesn't Trump just say, "We've rolled out a package that will denounce the KKK as a hate group. We do not stand for any groups that are hateful, that violate freedoms, that perpetrate violence
I
and
don't know.
spread hate." That's literally all he had to say. And
Yeah.
think about how many people have been like, you know what? That's all we wanted to hear from Trump. He said that. I'm in. I don't really like Biden. I'm not a
And
huge fan of him. I mean, you talk about politics and like that's really to me. Maybe it's not that simple. Maybe I'm naive to think it's that simple, but I feel like that's all you had to say. Like there's soft. They talk about a softball. Like there couldn't have been a
for the
better softball.
for the last 4 years, I've literally, and especially the first year, I literally wanted to just like I thought to myself many times out loud, like, man, like you've been given such an opportunity to do so much. And I mean, he could have been the most popular president in American history. Um, Instead of what might go down as the most hated and
Divisive.
disdained for president. There was a women's rally, million people, um, plus all over the country getting together post election because they recognize like sort of his history. If someone tells you or shows you what they are, believe them. His history of sort of womenizing,
Yeah.
grabbing by the pussy, like
Yeah.
all those things that were said. Um, it locker room talk, whatever you want to call it, it still riled up a lot of people to think like, gosh, this is like not a good human. But regardless of that, regardless of people having that opinion, it seemed like the opportunity, the platform was there. Hey, man, go out. Even if people disagree with you, use your platform, use your power to make people at least okay with it.
Yeah.
People okay with it. Like and then I don't know if it's the people in his party at the Senate level that the McConnells of the world that have gotten in his ear that have caused him to think a certain way. And then that tied in
I don't believe that. There's no way.
it's
There's
out
no
of his
way.
base. I don't know, but or the love and affection he gets out of his base that he loves so much that he yearns for so much that he can't deal with it, or the sort of egomaniacal sort of mindset that he has, the sort of this driven idea of I'm right always, and when I say goes, and like it's odd because in the simplest form, he could probably still win this election, and
Yeah, it's far from in the bag.
it's far from in the bag for Biden. He could probably still win this election. But what I think sometimes plays into his considerations, I mean this, and I don't know if other people see this. I think that he wants to create such a chaotic shitstorm that when he rises above it, which is not really rising above anything, but when he
Yeah.
rises above what he created, then people will say, okay, all right, he's all
Yeah.
right. He's all right. I saw Bob Johnson. I couldn't believe it. And I don't know if you saw this. Bob Johnson on CNBC, either this morning or yesterday morning. My days run together. I think it was yesterday morning. I asked him who he's going to support. And he said, I would rather support the devil I know than the
Oh,
devil
I
I.
saw that. I was like,
I
"What?"
was
But
blown away.
you know what
Now,
though? That it
he's
doesn't
talking
surprise
about
me.
business. It doesn't surprise me either. He's talking from a business standpoint. But for one, I don't think that we should be basing who leads our country on the devil, like you comparatively, like saying like the analogy.
That's a pretty bold. I mean, some
It's
would
terrifying.
disagree. That's pretty crazy analogy. Um, as it relates to Bob Johnson, the thing that this is why first of all, we really got to stop giving certain people platforms because a lot of people just be talking, and people they're probably gonna say that same thing about us. Like these dudes just be talking. But I mean, but from a listening perspective, when I think about Bob Johnson, he's a black billionaire. So he lives in a completely different world than the average black man or woman. So of course his mindset is going to be completely different. I personally believe that he said that because his pocketbook is going to look the same if Trump is reelected. Whereas if Biden is elected, he's going to be paying a little bit more than he's paying currently from a tax perspective. But that's a completely different conversation. Nonetheless, I believe that was completely monetarily motivated. Now, I could be wrong, but when a black billionaire who I've never, he done his thing with BET, but I just think that statement was pretty wild, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it was mind-boggling. And you're probably right. It was incentivized by other things other than just sort of clearly not, or not, maybe not clearly, maybe his view on social issues is similar to Donald Trump's. I don't know.
Could be,
I was
could be.
I was just surprised. And what you know, but I think in that same interview, and I need to go. I don't have to go back and look, but I think in that same interview, the interview asked him, do you, how do you feel when the person you're essentially, endorsing Donald Trump? How do you feel that he said that about, like, he wouldn't disavow the KKK or the good old boys, or what do they call, what's the group?
The Proud Boys.
The Proud Boys. And Bob Johnson completely ignored the question. Didn't address it. They ran out of time.
Yeah.
And you can't address it, right? Like, you can't, as a human being, address like that. That's just so absurd. And like, I mean, again, like, this is it's these issues. I can't tell at the surface level if it's just surface talk. But these are the issues that like do rile up people, that really do. Like, you have conservatives coming out, and again, you know, and I speak specifically and say conservatives because Donald Trump presents himself as conservative, but you have those who are of his support, in the House, in the Senate, who come out and say, this is just wrong.
Yeah.
You cannot and should not have these feelings. You should easily be able to say, I do not support the KKK. You should not be giving a platform for us to even have to have this conversation. It should be easy.
Mhm.
I don't care who you are. Just like if there was a equivalent group called the damn dude don'ts, and they came out and said we are a black supremacy organization, and
Yeah.
I wasn't capable of disavowing them, then I'm a racist, or I might be close to one. It's not a hard equation. If I don't, if
Yeah.
I know there's an organization that's whole premise is based on the sort of annihilation and or like suppression, or I'm sorry, oppression of another race in its entirety, it's not a real hard thing to recognize that that's not a group you should even let someone think you're affiliated with. And I
Right.
had this conversation with somebody the other day about why, and I was trying to understand. I asked, I said, well, why does why, like, how does someone justify that he can't do that? Like, how can someone? And this was a friend of mine. He's a Spanish friend of mine I've grown up with. He lives in Las Vegas, and he is conservative. And I, even after that, I asked him. I said, Did that change your vote? I'm just wondering how you feel. And his answer wasn't anything addressing that topic. His answer was,
Interesting.
I can't stand Joe Biden, which is what you hear so often, like what you hear a lot in 16 is, oh, can you really vote for this guy? Well, I can't stand him. Okay. And then you push it a step further, and then you chime in. Then you push it a step further and you say, well, I know, but like, you're Spanish, you live in a border state. Like, maybe if you end up on the other side of the wall, you might not be able to get back in. Does that change your opinion? And he's like, well, then it's like, well, what has Joe Biden done for people of color? And then he's like, well, remember when Joe Biden said he didn't want his children mixing with
Yeah.
other races back in the 80s or 70s, whenever the heck he's 60s, whenever he said that.
Yeah.
Um, it's bringing up. It's always sort of deflection. It's deflecting the question about it, and then it gets to that Bob Johnson mentality: the devil I know versus the devil I don't. If you're willing to sleep in bed with the devil, you got a problem altogether. And I guess what we have to sort of recognize happens too often is that somehow or another, people just start to categorically frame somebody into something that they might not still be. Um, and just going full circle into my point, someone continues to prove to you who they are, continue to believe them. If
Yeah.
someone shows you that they're someone you thought they were that they're not, give them maybe a little bit of support. And that's why, for me, that debate spoke volumes to me when he said that, because at least if I think, and people are trying to portray Joe Biden as this, this hair sniffing child,
That
whatever.
that shit is crazy. I mean,
It's
some of
crazy.
that stuff is weird. I'm not gonna lie to you. I seen the videos of that stuff, and it's like this
But,
dude
but
weird.
if you package
This dude is
anything into
weird.
a package to make it look really weird, it's gonna look weird. It looks weird. I mean, okay, maybe the man really likes the smell of hair. I don't know, and that's not for us to debate. But I don't think people really
Oh
believe that
man.
that he doesn't know he's a. Donald Trump said Joe Biden doesn't know he's alive. I don't think he knows he's alive. Is he a
Man,
great?
that stuff is hilarious. First of all, I'll say that stuff was funny, and I also will point out that I'm not completely convinced on Biden either. So I don't want people to think that I'm sitting here just like we're going ham on Trump and we're just gonna leave Biden out. Like, no, we're gonna give it to Biden too, because some of the stuff he says, like, and there's a documented history, like you talked about, that can be questioned, especially when it comes to his feelings toward people of color. Albeit he was a person of color as vice president, that doesn't really matter. And I had a friend ask me, he was like, "Hey, Keenan, so he's convinced. He's one of my really good friends. He's like, I think Trump's gonna win." And I'm like, man, I don't know. Like we had these conversations like almost on a daily. And he was like, so who you gonna vote for? And I told him Biden. I have no problem sharing that here. I'm gonna vote for Joe Biden. And he was like, well, so why are you gonna vote for him? One, and number two, he was like, do you really think he's gonna win? And we gotta go back and forth about who's gonna win. But I told him, I was like, to be honest with you, from a policy perspective, and this might sound very ignorant, but from a policy perspective, I'm not 100% sure how Joe Biden versus Trump's policies will affect me, um, one way or the other. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. And this is when we talked about not spitting out, just propaganda. Like that's me being completely transparent, right? I'm complete unsure of how either or would affect me directly. The reason I would go, the reason I would go the Biden direction, vice to Trump, is simply because I believe that there should be there's it's just a lot of polarization in our company, in our country right now. And I believe that having somebody like Joe Biden will kind of bring some stability to an otherwise chaotic democracy, country, society. I mean, if you look at it from a foreign policy perspective, our relationship with some of our allies, all those things are crazy right now. So I'm voting for him from a stability perspective. And maybe that's ignorant of me. And people could probably be very critical of that take, especially since we point out how some people don't necessarily do their due diligence
Well,
on on
look,
the candidates.
look. I mean, I think that it's easy to say that from the other side, and then I think that you're almost, it's almost, you know, um, well, I mean, it's Bob Johnson, sort of, and then I think that's what like to him, that's stability. The devil he knows
Yeah.
versus the he doesn't. That's stability to him. So that's
Yeah.
okay for you to frame it that way. But I think our job, as me as a millennial and you as a millennial, and hopefully, as we bring people on and as we discuss and we have questions from Gen Z and and so on, I think our job is to help people understand what that stability means to you. And the stability to you means that the you perceive instability as an inability, maybe to cross party lines or to have or portray an actual plan for anything.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't. Again, I don't. I will say right now, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I probably, I'm a registered. I'm not afraid to say that I'm a registered Democrat. That will probably change in the future. I will become a registered independent. But right now my vote's likely leaning towards Joe Biden because, candidly, even if I removed from the policy standpoint, the things that I saw and the manner in which I saw that debate take place on Tuesday, I was with two Caucasian friends in my living room. One ultra conservative, who's a very good friend of mine, and another who's sort of middle of the road, but from Michigan, and just has mixed views about things. We were all just sitting there like,
What is
damn,
going on?
yeah, and
What is
and it
going on?
felt like, I mean, and I get it. Like, you got to be heated. Debates are meant to be impactful, and they're meant to be a discourse maybe that's not for everyone, but everybody after that was just in awe. It was a
Yeah.
true show. And maybe I'm biased in the sense of, I felt like Joe Biden brought himself to that level because he there's so many times he could overcome it. I don't know, and who knows, man? You're in front of a million, you're in front of the whole world. You're running for president of the United States, and you're 70 plus years old. Who knows what's going through your thoughts? You're probably trying to keep in mind the things that you need to say to the
Yeah.
American audience.
That's honestly too old in my opinion.
Yeah, I
For
mean, both
somebody
of
to
them
be.
are too old. I mean, Trump's in his 70s. I mean,
I
both
know
of them.
they're both too old in my opinion.
I'm
And
speaking to.
to your point about Biden, I actually was tweeting about. I was kind of live tweeting my thoughts. As the debate was going on, and somebody tweeted me. He actually made a good point. He was like, regardless of how you feel, like there's no reason why that anyone should call the current president of the United States a clown on national television. And at first I kind of was like, but then I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? He actually has a point, right? So in my
Of
opinion,
course he has.
in my opinion, and by a point, I mean I'm not talking about Biden. I'm talking about the person that tweeted me, and this is why I think that
No, I agree. The person who tweeted you has a very good point to say that. You should not call the president of the United States a clown, but
I
you
just
have to look at, I mean, but keep going. I love this talk.
yeah, but so I felt like I was like, regardless of how you may feel that it may or may not be warranted, that is for you to decide. As a sitting president, if you're allowing something like that, it was clear from those type of responses that whatever Trump was doing was getting to Joe, in my opinion.
Yeah, of course it
Now,
was.
there were times where Joe was looking at the camera, he was talking to American people where Trump was kind of directing, throwing insults at him, right? And I actually asked my
Anyway,
buddy, yeah, I was asking my buddy about. He says that what Trump is doing is called leveling, right? And he wants to bring people down to his level, which he did with Joe, but nobody can out Trump. So from that perspective, it's a great strategy for Trump. And he baited Joe, and Joe went down to that level, right? So when he's like, "Will you just shut up?" and he just kept calling him a clown, and he's like, "This clown," I just felt like to voters it could be perceived like that. Just there's a level of respect uh, in that high level of politics for the president, for the office of the president. Regardless if you respect the person, you respect the office, you respect the
well,
role.
and that's exactly right. And I don't, and look, if anybody has the ability or audacity to think that that was appropriate, that's hypocritical too. I mean, reverse the scenario. Um, if in 2008, if John McCain had in a debate with Barack Obama, well, Barack wasn't president then. In 2012, um,
That was
had
Mitt Romney in 12.
Mitt Romney, excuse me, yeah, in 2012, had Mitt Romney um, said, this clown or something to Obama, the world would have been shocked. The
Yeah,
world would have been
folks would have been pissed.
shocked. But the discourse that Obama had with his opponents was cordial. They shook hands before. They had
Well, they
disagreements about,
they can't shake hands now. I mean, it's Corona.
yeah, of course, but disagreements about policy. There were
Yeah,
so many opportunities, and this could be a whole podcast. Like, we have days of this. There were so many opportunities where Joe Biden, and it must be hard, man. I mean, there's probably hundreds of lights right there shining bright on you. You got the moderator, you got your family, you got his family, you got him screaming in your ear, you got all this stuff going. I cannot
and,
fathom the
and
amount of
calling
pressure.
your
You're probably
son,
sweating.
talking about your son's drug addiction, talking about him
Oh, yeah,
being.
all
I
this
mean,
stuff
I mean,
happening.
he hitting low. I mean, he throwing
There are so many
haymakers.
Absolutely. There are so many opportunities. Mr. President, respectfully, I would ask you to shut up, but that would be un-American to say that to the president of the United States. But what I will ask you to do respectfully is to honor the rules and the discourse of the president of the United States should have in a debate with somebody who is challenging his beliefs. Respectfully, sir, please allow me to speak and respect me as a man or, as an
Yeah,
individual.
that would have been. I mean, it's easy for us to say that, right? We sitting here
It's
comfortable
easy for us
at
to
the house,
say it.
but no, but you have to know, being critical of that of Joe. I mean, you're it's not like the debate came up like a week before. Like they were gonna happen. You know that he was gonna come at you, right? That's not news. Like it wasn't like he was like, all right, we're gonna keep this, keep this
Yeah,
policy level. Like you know what you're gonna get from President Trump. You know his style of campaigning. There's years of evidence. So for you to like, I don't know, again, emotions start to go, you start to get angry, 100%
yeah,
understand. But for someone that's running for a presidential role, there's just ways that you got to act as much as I may not necessarily as I would have loved to. Somebody was calling my son a drug addict and talking about his past. Yeah, I'd be tempted to come across the aisle. I'm not going to lie to you. But that's me. I'm not
yeah.
running for president. But if you're running for president, you have to have a completely different um, way that you outlook. And so, with all that said, Che, and it's been it's really great. There's one topic that I definitely we have to hit on, and I want our listeners. The reason why we're talking again is just to give you the idea to spark you to do your own research, to do your own discovery, and just kind of look and figure things out on your own. And like we want to spark you to read and look for contrarian views and challenge us, right? But there's one point that we cannot leave talking about a month out of the election. The perpetual lies about the so-called mail-in voter fraud.
And
That pissed me off
well,
the most.
before,
Outside of the white supremacy thing, that was the thing that pissed me off the most to listen and hear about. Um, and it's interesting for people that think I'm just being biased. Go to DDale8 on Instagram. He is CNN, regardless of what you feel about CNN. He's their dedicated fact-checking reporter, and you can look on his page and find why what the president was saying was incorrect as it relates to mail-in voter fraud. And to be honest with you, it just seems like outright voter suppression. But I don't think it's going to be outright voter suppression. It's going to turn into voter disenfranchisement. And they're always talking about, voters getting the wrong ballots, getting with other people's names on them, and that's the big concern, right? So I can send a vote in as John Doe, but I'm Keenan, right? And then I send a vote in as Keenan, so now I got two votes, right? Um, but the problem is, I guess, especially in New York, some people got the wrong envelopes, and they're saying it would be less about voter suppression and more about voter disenfranchisement because those votes won't count. So, how many votes will get screwed up through this mail-in process um, that won't count, and how big of that will be, right? And my argument toward what the president is saying is he's been talking voter, mail-in fraud, rigged election. That tells me that he feels like he's on his heels. Because a man that was confident that knew he was going to win, I don't think it would be a problem. And I would challenge anybody that makes that argument to me. So if Trump wins, can we claim a rigged election? And I would almost guarantee you that's a question I really wish Joe would have asked Trump while he was on stage. Excuse me. So if you win, is the election still rigged? Because we heard Joe Biden talking about how if we lose, it is what it is. He didn't talk about he didn't go into detail about rigged election. He hasn't been spewing off about rigged election like Trump has. So I question the motives behind it. To me, I feel like it's a grandstand for someone that feels that they're going to lose and not be reelected. And this is the only thing they have. And if they do lose, they can pull out all the stops to try to challenge the result. And I really don't want I don't think our country is in a place where we can get through another 2000 with Gore and Bush. And I also feel I would say that a lot of people, millennials, Gen Zers, don't really know about. I would encourage you to go check out, just read an article about what went on in that 2000 election, which it's inconceivable to me that something like that happened. And I can only imagine if that happened in a social media era. I was completely unaware of what really happened, and honestly, until about a few months ago. So I don't think us as a country. I think we'll be fine, but I think it would be pretty dividing even more so if we had something like that happen. Um, it's so crazy. 2020 is really piling on with the coronavirus, with and in it having it in an election year in this environment. And so I know I'm gonna get a little long winded because I'm really passionate about this voter thing. And it's crazy because I've never voted and for a president before in my life. I didn't vote last election. Again, I'm not afraid to say those things. As irresponsible as it may have been, the reason why is because the process of me getting registered was a little difficult because I was kind of bouncing around a little bit. And I don't know. I just it's a difficult process to do the absentee ballot, and I didn't want to do it. But I am certainly registered here today in Tennessee, and I will be voting in this election. So, um, Che, I want to hear you chime in, but I just want to encourage all of our listeners. Please, please, please go register. Don't be lazy. Don't do what I did. Go register. Go vote. Your vote counts. Do not let these people, whoever it may be, suppress you from your constitutional right to cast your ballot.
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot there, and I think it all hits on, and I think that um, I think that voter suppression is going to occur. I don't think that President Trump was shy about um, asking for it to occur, calling into question the validity of an election is, I mean, unprecedented. Um, when there's less than 1% of 1% of 1% of that actually has occurred,
Yeah.
and Republican or Democrat, all over the country, secretaries of states all over the country, um, no matter color of the state, will tell you that that's never been something that's occurred, but maybe it will.
For sure.
Maybe balloons will start falling from the sky, and so will frogs. I've never seen that happen, and I don't think it will. And statistically, it hasn't. Maybe it will. Maybe we should talk about it at an election as if it's going to occur, or to debate as if it's going to occur. So I think that, yeah, I agree. And then saying that we need to have, you know, poll watchers, and saying I think people should go to those polls after and watch those. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. You telling people in rural counties, maybe in rural southern states, who only listen to what the president tells them they're supposed to think, might show up to a polling place, cross the train line with a shotgun saying, turn around and go home. You're not voting today. I don't know. But those things happened in years past, and who knows?
Yeah, let's hope
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
yeah,
But
that would
I
be
mean,
disastrous.
yeah, and so yeah, that upset me too. And there was a lot of things, and again, one of the things I wanted to make sure we didn't not touch on, and I think I think you're right. I think it's going to be it's going to be a tough time for people, and I hope people go out and vote. And I'm glad, Keenan, to hear that you're going to be voting for the first time. I certainly know, as your agent, how busy of a time 2016 was for you. So I can understand that your democratic right, not democratic as in who you support, but as in we're a democracy. You're right as a citizen. You do not take that lightly, and I'm proud to hear that you're going to be voting this year. One thing you mentioned at the outset of the show that I want to make sure we touch on too, that I want to just remind you of, that I don't know if I got to comment on, but I want to give feedback, or the hypocrisy that we see with respect to that issue as it pertains to President Trump speaking to, or how people react to Trump not his unwillingness to say something negative about the KKK, but yet how people get so upset about athletes kneeling or showing peaceful ways of protesting what they think to be a social injustice, not anything other than. And you did touch on it, but I just want to say I think it's not hypocrisy in the sense that it's intentional hypocrisy, but I just wish and I hope people will stop and think about, the same people who were in the Kansas City arena that were booing the Chiefs' first game when they wanted to show us a form of unity, are the same people who were
Mhm.
booing at the Ole Miss Florida game this past weekend, or maybe it was Mississippi State Florida, um, when the players on both teams decided to take a knee before, not during the anthem, but just before the kickoff, and you could hear boos in the crowd. I hope those same people boo someone who is unwilling to um, show a disdain for any type of um, racism in any respect,
Mhm.
or who's unwilling to show a disdain for any type of racism in any respect.
Yep.
And what those players are trying to do, and I guess I say this more so as an agent, but what those players are trying to do is just point our eyes and open our eyes and ears to an issue that's just real. Um, and what others sometimes try to do to those players is conflate things that aren't real with what is real. You conflate something about respecting the flag. It's never been about the flag. We know that. But you conflate these issues. You make it about the flag so that we make our ears tone deaf to what the reality of the circumstance is. And too often, and I think what showed a lot in that debate was that was what was happening a lot. That there was just a lot of deflection. I think Donald Trump still has an opportunity to win this election.
For sure.
I think that if he's doing what I think he's doing, I think that he will come back stronger in the second debate. And I'm starting to figure him out in the sense that I think he wants to set the bar so low that all he can do is go higher. So if you have the worst possible debate on your first debate, he's probably sitting back like, I got old Joe where I want him. I got him to say he's going to raise taxes. We're going to put that all over. We're going to put that all over every ad a week leading up to the election and every day until the election. I got him to say that. So I'll just tell people, Sleepy Joe's going to raise your taxes. That's all people are going to hear. They're going to vote for me. And then when I have a second debate, everybody's going to say Trump did a much better job. He was much more calm. He was much more blah, blah, blah. It was a town hall setting. And then it's going to be, in his mind, he's going to be, I got people right where I want them. Sleepy Joe doesn't know what's going on. He'll continue to call him Sleepy Joe. And I think unless Joe Biden takes some level of presidential tone, of rising above it, Michelle Obama so eloquently put it, when they
go low, we
when
go
they
high.
hit high, I'm sorry, when they go low, we go high. And I think if Joe Biden wants to have a chance in this election, I think he's going to have to go high, and he's going to have to show presidential resolve and presidential resolve in the way that we pictured presidents resolve before President Trump. And not to say, speaking specifically to Obama, I'm speaking to Bush, I'm speaking to Clinton, I'm speaking to Bush, speaking to Reagan. Those are the only presidents I've had in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And if I remember anything about them, love or hate them, I remember that although as a young college student with a dad who's a political science professor, although I vehemently disagreed with at the time some of the policies of President Bush, especially some of the policies of Dick Cheney, I can look in the mirror and I can think to myself, and I know, and it almost makes me tear up thinking about it, but if I met George Bush, it would be easy for me to say, thank you for being our president. Thank you for helping us get through 9/11. Thank you for your commitment to your country, to your family, to helping us grow and become one nation under God. And I mean that, and I do get sort of tearful thinking about that. I miss Bush Republicans, and I never thought I would say that, but I do.
That's crazy.
It's crazy for me, right? But I sincerely do, because you know what I've seen here of late, and again, now I'm showing where my mind is, my heart is right now. But what I've seen here of late, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of what you care, I just have seen tensions get to a level. Discourse, conversation is at a level where it's unhealthy, it's gross, it's uncomfortable, Um, and it sucks. And I wanted today. My best friend is a news anchor, and then we'll finish with this, or not finish with this. We move on to the next topic. But my best friend's a news anchor in Texas. I'm not going to say what city in Texas, but she's from New York. And we were great friends. We met in class in college, economics class, in fact. And we have a wonderful relationship. In fact, congratulations to her. She just had her second child. And in fact, I'd love to get her on. I bet she'd be a rock star on the show. But we used to have debates in 2003 and 2004 about the president. And she would always go for Bush, and I was going on the other side. At that time, I was much more like polarizingly to the left. Um, but we had debates and we had a disagreement, and then we'd go out and have drinks together. Or we would go and enjoy each other's company, and we would go be parties, and I still call her my best friend. She is now, and she was born pretty wealthy. Dad's a doctor, conservative family, conservative upbringing, and she lives in Texas now. She's a news anchor in Texas. And she is an independent who this last election voted for Hillary, and this coming election is going to vote for Joe Biden. Because, and she's a white female who, those are based on facts, not based on my opinion, but based on facts. That's who's going to determine this election. It's suburban white females. That's the vote that Trump carried 2-1 that won him the 2016 election. And he turned her because she has a daughter who's 4 years old, and she cannot fathom the thought of her daughter receiving that that's the only president her daughter has known in her lifetime. And she can't fathom her only knowing that president for another 4 years, but also just the level of discourse, the level of disdain, the level of frustration that people have in just talking about stuff. We should be able to have a conversation. 2016, even if you were pro-Hillary or pro-Trump, I still think, or pro-Obama, pro-Trump, or whatever, people will get upset, but they wouldn't get riled up to the point of wanting to go and like choke the other person. I think right now there is a feeling that people almost want to do stuff like that, and it's terrifying. And so I hope that whoever wins, and if Trump does somehow change, if he does win, he does route the support based on policy and politics, but politics that resonate because they are factual in nature, not because they're BS bullshit about voter fraud and mail-in voting, all this other nonsense. He wins on the facts and things that he says are true, then God bless him. He's my president, and I hope he does a good job. That's what I thought in 2016. That's what I think in 2020. Damn it, we got to stop all this sad disdain for each other and stop riding politics. And I'm telling this to Gen Z, and I urge you to get behind me. Let's rise above it. Let's not hold a political affiliation like it's our support for Alabama or Navy football.
Yeah.
Let's hold it like it's something that we just happen to support because we believe in the ideals behind those people, and we favor more of those ideals than others. But if I see a spade, I'm gonna call a spade. If I see a racist, you should call a racist. If somebody does something bad, damn it, you should call them out and say, hey, I support you, but I cannot support you if that's how you feel and that's what you're willing to say or not say. And if we get that, we'll all be better people at the end of the day. Yeah, there's my diatribe, Keenan Reynolds.
No, that was great. And you really hit the nail on the head as it relates to you talked about being able to have those debates and then being able to go out to dinner. And I feel like that was a great way of explaining my earlier point about the stability piece. And I think maybe that Joe Biden is, in my opinion, Joe Biden as president can kind of bring that back. But at the end of the day, that's a people thing. Like it doesn't matter who the leader is. It's a people thing. So us as a society have to have that conversation. And it really got to the point over the last few years where, like, kind of like you said, like you see if somebody was an open Trump supporter, they almost, depending on where they were, like people kind of look at them funny. And I don't think that should be the case at all, and vice versa. But I think it's just it just based on the type of what we've seen from the president over the last few years. It brings a disdain amongst people that don't support him, and so when they see people that do support him, they automatically attach those ideals and beliefs with that person, regardless on if they know that person from Adam. And so, you know, there is a little bit to do with the person that they're supporting as it relates to sowing that discord and polarization. Just because, I mean, you think about some of the things that the president does, the way he attacks people on Twitter, it's very polarizing, it's very, insulting. Like he insults a lot of people. That's just his tactic. If you're not riding with him, then you gonna hear about it on his Twitter feed, and that's just kind of the way it is. But you know, it's a lot that we could talk about. It's a lot we could cover. I'm looking at my notes right now, and I mean, we hit a lot of good things, and really looking forward to continuing conversations. And to our listeners, it's not going to be political. I just felt it just was obviously very uh, relevant and useful to have this conversation in light of the debate being this week, so and the election being a month out. But,
Mr. Reynolds,
but our,
who you got in the NBA Finals, sir? Since we didn't talk about that, let's at least let the viewers know who Keenan Reynolds is picking to win the chip.
yeah, so I mean, I got to ride with Bron. I mean, I'm not a Bron stan per se. I was a Kobe fan when I was growing up. Rest in peace. So I'm gonna rock with the Lake Show and LeBron. I think it's cool to kind of see the Heat. I think seeing. I mean, I wouldn't have been opposed to seeing like the Nuggets and the Heat in the finals. I think that would have been cool to see like some different teams in the finals, like because it's literally been either the Warriors or LeBron for as long as I can remember in the finals, or both. So like there hasn't been a finals that isn't like Golden State or the Warriors. I don't know when. I can't remember that. Golden State or LeBron, and God knows when. Maybe this entire past decade. I don't know, but nonetheless, I got to rock with Bron, man. He's playing at another level. I think him being in a bubble, which we know Bron gets focused in the playoffs, but him being in a bubble especially it's a different level, man. He doesn't look like he's in year 17, and I mean the way they played last night, and then you got Jimmy Butler hobbling. Um, I don't think the Heat got enough firepower to go the distance. I mean, it's pretty cool to see their run. I feel like the bubble has been some hellacious basketball. Like some of the performances we've seen. Like I didn't know who Jamal Murray was. I'm not a dour basketball fan, but I didn't know who Jamal Murray was till he got to the bubble and started hooping. So I mean, shit. I mean, it's been a great ride, and I mean to have the finals and the NFL at the same time, like this is a sports fan's dream, in my opinion. So I'm super hyped. But yeah, I'm like to answer your question, long winded, but we went with Bron for the finals.
I got two words for you. LeBron James. That's it. Because I'm gonna tell you, look, there's a reason. The reason you only know LeBron James and the Warriors, because the man is everything that is everything to the game of basketball. He is greatness personified on and off the court, but especially on the court. And the man is a certified killer. There's no question about it. The man he's out there, and he's 30 plus years old, 17 years in the league, dominating, making everybody recognize you gonna step down and recognize my throne. You dare come up and try to recognize or try to put yourself on pedestal with me. And Jimmy Butler's he's a bad man, but he's no LeBron James at all. So I'm so excited. I'm thrilled to see him get here. I'm thrilled to see him win his fourth chip. He may not. They might come back, make a remarkable run, but I agree with you. I actually, some of my friends, I took the Heat. I'm sorry, I took the Lakers in a sweep, but I did predict the Heat would get here. That's a true story, actually. When I was in Miami for the Super Bowl, I saw two of the Heat games. My good friend in Miami took me. He has season tickets to the Heat, and I'm sure he'll love that when the Heat come back to the season if they ever play at the arena anytime soon. But I saw them and I was like, man. And I told him, I was like, these guys are they're good, and they play well, they look good, and they're abundantly confident. And Jimmy Butler is a great leader. Eric Spoelstra is an amazing coach, and I actually thought that the Heat might give the Lakers a little bit of trouble because I figured Spo would have an ability to not stop LeBron, but to at least contain him in some regard. But Anthony Davis is the X factor, and so if you stop LeBron James, good luck stopping AD. AD is maybe the third best player on the planet. AD is the Scottie Pippen that LeBron James has been needing since he lost Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, and now that he's got his Scottie, I would suspect that the Lakers will win this one. And I'll tell you what, after they win this one, I'm ready for next season because, boy, when the next season starts up and you got the Nuggets, and you got Golden State.
When KD and Kyrie come back,
and you got the Nets, you got the Celtics, you got Philly now with Doc Rivers coaching.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Doc Rivers, man, it's going to be – hey, the NBA is going to be competitive, man. Clay, Steph coming back. You know, I can't wait to see a Lakers Warriors West Conference Finals. I mean, it just depends on what AD decides to do.
Hey, you already forgot about the Clippers, you know? I mean, hey, we all forget. Why is the second coming of Jordan? People putting him on a pedestal. Bro. He's
he shit the bed in Game 7, bro. He gave up a 3-1, bro. I don't want to hear none of that.
Look, Kawhi.
He didn't shoot worth for nothing in that game.
Hey, but people try to compare like Kawhi to LeBron. Excuse me? You realize what would have happened? LeBron James made the Eastern Conference Final and then lost 3 straight games to lose the final. On top of that, LeBron leaves Cleveland, the whole city shuts down, and the team in the league. Kawhi leaves Toronto, and they're the second best team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, it's not.
That's actually a really good point. That's a really good point.
Great point. Yeah, LeBron James. Answer that. Any question anybody asks me, what's going to happen in the NBA? I say LeBron James. That's what happened.
And then you got, the Clips got Pandemic P. You don't know who you're going to get game in, game out. He might drop 38. He might go 2 for 17. Like, you don't know who the hell going to show up on the court.
Yeah.
Man. So, yeah, I mean, the Clips, Lakers, Nuggets, time. Warriors. Man, West going to be competitive next year. Can't forget about the Rockets either. I mean, they always play good in the regular season. Then when it gets to the playoffs, they shit the bed. Like it's almost like a spin cycle with James Harden. Like regular season MVP, and then get to the playoffs, and then where you at, James? Nowhere to be found.
Let's hope they get him some help there. We'll see what happens. I mean, he got West, but
I was about to say, you don't think Russ is enough help? Like,
you know what's scary about this? People forget about what happened in 2012, though. People forget. I know that was a young team. People forget, though. They had OKC had Russ, had James, and they also had Kevin Durant.
Didn't they get swept?
But hold on. No, they didn't get swept. But do you know who they ran into?
LeBron
James.
What, they got them in 5? I know they didn't go past 5. I remember that.
I don't remember. But that team was loaded. That OKC team was loaded, but so was that. So was that
Heat team. Golly, man. It's prime LeBron. Well, LeBron prime been shit since he got to the Heat.
LeBron still is prime. The man is better today. The man is as good today as he was 15 years ago. LeBron James is the greatest human athlete I have ever seen in my entire life. And I don't think
over Serena? I don't know. I'm going to give that with Serena. The greatest athlete of all time. I'm going with Serena.
Oh, you just broke the all-time category. I can't wait for this. I'm so happy we're doing this show because you said some things that have offended me because I've not been live long enough for all time. But Serena Williams, I think, is one of the, if not the greatest, one of the greatest athletes of all time.
So who's your GOAT?
My athlete, my GOAT athlete,
just the best overall athlete ever.
That's a hard one, man, because I didn't witness these people, but Jim Brown, based on everything I've read,
that's fair. He was an All-American in football and lacrosse.
Yeah.
So check this out. So my sponsor dad, shout out to Rich, he told me, he said Jim Brown is the greatest lacrosse player to ever live, and he didn't start playing. I don't think he started playing until he got to Syracuse. I don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but my sponsor dad, he's been around for a while. He knows lacrosse. That's like he's from Maryland, so lacrosse capital of the world. Some would argue. He told me Jim Brown's the greatest of all time. So that's actually a very good argument. I mean, we could go down the list. I said Serena, but I mean, one could say Deion Sanders. One could say Bo Jackson. one could
Yeah,
say,
Bo was in there. Bo was in there. Michael Jordan's
yeah,
in there.
Michael Jordan.
Marks the
Yeah,
GOAT.
I mean that's like a lazy pick. That's like you don't know your athletes, so MJ. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know, man. There's some hellacious athletes, from like the last 60 years, man. It's been crazy. I mean, I'm trying to think. Man, we could. Yeah, this gonna be a great podcast. We kind of went off the sports end. So for those of our listeners that was like, man, when they gonna talk sports? We finally got to the sports after the first hour of politics. But we're gonna find a way to loop everything in, man. We trying to talk about all the things that are relevant to you, and who's leading your country is obviously relevant. And then we're gonna talk money. We might talk some movies. We might talk music. I don't know if I want to talk music with Che, but before we might talk music. Obviously we talking sports. Great time for sports right now. Everything is on. You can watch whatever you want. Playoff baseball, finals, NFL, NHL just wrapped up. I mean, man, the summer has been from like the end of July, August till now has been a great stretch for sports fans. But yeah, man, I think we up against our time, so we're gonna close this one out. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Please keep tuning in. We have been fine-tuning this thing longer than you can imagine to get it right for you, to put together the greatest product that we could come up with, and we're only gonna keep getting better as we go. Again, thank you for listening to the Quarterback in Your Life podcast. Signing off. Goodbye.